what you're looking at. We'll stop right here. I'm looking here. Look to your right. You're going to see traffic moving to your right. That traffic is on the Baltimore Pike. Immediately in front of us is, and you can see the tower, atop of it. Look straight ahead to the bus. You can see the observation tower on top of Hawks Hill. Now the cemetery is going to be probably easier, maybe about the length of a bus. He's at about the length of a bus. Let's go ahead. He's at the length of the bus because I want him to see the Baltimore Pike. Just stay it because we're not going to get off. All right, see the cars moving? That's Cemetery Hill. We're going to stop right now. First, we're going to talk the human interest story. John Wesley Culp grew up on this property. In 1860, he will move down to Virginia, settle in the area of Martinsburg, and will join the 2nd Virginia Infantry, which will be in the Stonewall Brigade. Now, he leaves two good friends back here, Jenny Wade and Jack Scully. Jack Scully will join the 87th Pennsylvania. Jack Scully is planning to marry Jenny Wade. On the march up from Virginia at the Battle of Winchester on the 13th and 14th of June, Jack Scully is badly wounded. Among the Confederate troops engaged there are the Stonewall Brigade, and John Wesley Culp will visit the hospital and will meet Jack Scully. Jack Scully's been badly wounded. He's a local boy. They have a company in the 87th Pennsylvania, and Jack is going to tell John Wesley, well, if just by chance you end up near Gettysburg, I want you to see Jenny Wade. I've spoken for Jenny Wade, you remember her? Well, Jack said, Wesley Culp says yes, and let her know I have been badly wounded. On the 2nd day of July, the 2nd Virginia is in this area. But John Wesley Culp doesn't get a chance to go to speak to Jenny Wade. On the 3rd, John Wesley Culp will be killed in the fighting near where we're going to be. Jenny Wade that morning will be needing bread, and she's been a good Samaritan and gone to her sister's house near the Holiday Inn and is helping her out since she gave birth to a child on the 1st. And while she's eating bread, a bullet will come through the door at the Jenny Wade house, strike her in the abdominal area, and she is dead. So both Culp and Jenny Wade die on the 3rd. Jack Scully will take a turn for the worse, and he will die on the 13th day of July. Wonderful human interest story. So now what the Confederates are going to do, they're going to deploy, as you can see on map 16, they're going to deploy covered by in Linebacker Run and behind Rock Creek, which are left. And about 7:30, they're going to advance. Out in front of us here, deployed as skirmishers between this fence line and the next fence line are the 33rd Massachusetts and the 41st New York. And they're going to fall back. And the Confederates are going to advance. And they're going to reach East Cemetery Hill, where we can see those cars. You people like bloodshed are going to get a lot of it on the last stop before we take our lunch break, as there's going to be very vicious fighting. And this is going to be at the same time that our friend General Wright has reached his high water mark at the angle. And you're going to find out who's going to stop the Confederates here. General Hancock will go to Samuel Sprague Carroll, 1856 Redwood West Point, go to Sprigtop, and tell him to get his ass up to Little East Cemetery Hill as fast as he can. And they'll kick the Confederates off East Cemetery Hill and recover the cannons that the Confederates had captured. So this is going, we're looking across the line of advance. Coming from our left, going up to where we see those cars moving, is a line of advance that the two Confederate brigades will advance and reach and seize momentarily East Cemetery Hill. All right, we're going to ease forward now. This is a park road. This road is not here at the time of the war. The road we can see where the cars are moving on are the Baltimore Pike, and you may see, as we get a little further to the east, you may even see yes, you can see the entrance to Evergreen Cemetery. Look to your right now. See the entrance to Evergreen Cemetery? On to your right. All right. And you'll see it. Everybody can see it if they're looking for it. All right, we're going to continue. Falls Hill is wooded. Now immediately to our left, where the ground drops off, is Rock Creek, as you can see on your map. Probably better now to move to your map. You can continue to look at map 16. See Rock Creek on your map? That's right over there in the trees. And that's where Edward Johnson, old Allegheny, with his about 5,500 men, are going to wade Rock Creek about 6:30 on the afternoon of the second day of July. And they're going to attack the Union. Out here is a Union picket line, manned by men from George Sears Greene's Brigade, the 75th New York. And they're going to fall back up the slopes of the around now. Okay, we move a little faster. There's round where we're at the foot of Culp's Hill. The Confederates, if you're in John Marshall Jones's brigade, you can see on your map, are going to cross this area. The closer you get, the further east we go, the deeper Rock Creek is going to get, because there's going to be McAllister's Mill. They have a dam, and the water is going to back up behind McAllister's Mill. So the closer to McAllister's Mill, the deeper Rock Creek is going to be when you ford it. So that means that Stewart's brigade is going to have more trouble fording Rock Creek than is John Marshall Jones's Virginia Brigade, or the brigade commanded by Colonel Stafford of 5 Louisiana regiments between the two. It's very steep, as you can see. It was wooded then, and as it is now. And this is going to be on the this is on the evening of the 2nd. Now the Confederate forces have been weakened up here. The Union forces have, because General Slocum has been ordered to take a division of the 12th Corps, move them from the Spangler Springs area, where we're going to be parking very soon, and take them down to Little Round Top. This is going to be after 6 o'clock, and that means off goes Slocum with acting commander of the 12th Corps, Alpheus Williams, and Williams' brigade division commanded by Ruger, leaving John Geary with his division to hold Culp's Hill, the eastern face of it, and Geary will get orders to move. Geary will move, take the wrong road, and that will leave only George Sears Greene's men to hold a front that had been formerly held by 10,000 Union troops by 1800, and he will hold most of it. The Confederates will seize a foothold on it, on Culp's Hill. We're going to come out into Spangler's Meadow, and we're going to debus there. When we debus there, we're going to be talking about events both on July 2nd in the evening and during the morning hours of July 3rd. When we're talking about July 3rd, we will be using Powers Hill. Powers Hill will be where Meade will move his headquarters after the bombardment begins on the 3rd day of July. So he is going to be out of it. He's not going to be witnessing Pickett's charge. He will only arrive back at the angle after the Confederates have been repulsed. Everybody on map 16, you all circle Powers, on map 18, Powers Hill. The Union have cannons up there, as you can see, 3 batteries of artillery.
Holding it up.
And as you can see where we are, we're on Culp's Hill. So you orient your map, we're on Culp's Hill and Spangler's Meadow. And over there, that hill we can see that I am looking at is Powers Hill. At the base of Powers Hill, as you can see, as Ray does, she can see the Baltimore Pike. The Confederates reached the Baltimore Pike, they've cut Meade's route of escape from here in case the Federals get whopped here. Now we'll do it the way we did before. Since the Union are here first, we're going to be looking at map, what's the earlier map?
16.
16. When we, General Slocum arrives here on the evening of the 1st day of July. He has a numerically small corps, around 10,000 men, organized into 2 divisions. Now Meade, early on the day of the 2nd, plans to take the offensive against the Confederates. That's in the morning of the 2nd. That's also a reason he isn't going to be focusing as much as he should on the Union left, where General Sickles is. And when he plans to take the offensive, General Slocum is the next highest ranking officer in the Army of the Potomac. And he tells General Slocum, you will be in command of the Army's right wing. Meade will cancel, of course, will cancel any thought he has of taking the offensive on the 2nd day of July. But still in his mind, Slocum believes he's in command of the Army's right wing. Now, if you're using the fishhook simile, we're at the barb of the hook. This is what you don't want to run into your finger, because it's going to be barbed and it's going to give you a lot of pain. And from here, you'll go around the curve of the hook. So the barb of the hook, who's that simile, is right here in Spangler's Meadow. The tie of the hook at the end of the shank is little round top. Using that simile that a lot of people do. So we're here, and as we go into the 2nd, now they have a now remember, Geary is a very overbearing fellow. He's been mayor of San Francisco. He put the fear of God into the vigilantes in San Francisco. If you go to San Francisco, there's a Geary Street. I'm talking of the early 1850s. He goes to Kansas as territorial governor and puts the fear of God in both of the Pukes and the Jayhawks. So he has a high opinion of himself. He's a big man. The Chicago Bears would want him for a linebacker, because he has a big ego, and he's physically strong and very opinionated. So the 12th Corps will extend from this area here, the barb of the hook, the point that you don't want to stick into your finger, up around as you go into the curve. Now, Culp's Hill has two crests. You have the major crest, which is where you have the tower. Then you have a lesser crest, which is just going to be about 200 yards from where we're standing, and there's a saddle between them. So as they take position on Culp's Hill, the left flank of Geary's division will anchor on the right flank of everybody's favorite unit, men of the 1st Division of the 1st Corps, the Iron Brigade. And they will extend down the mountain to beyond the saddle. Then out in this area will be Ruger's division. Now, Greene is the oldest officer of rank here. He graduated from West Point way back in 1823 and had left the Army to become an engineer. And he understands something that most of the higher ranks don't understand. The lower ranks are beginning to understand it. He's going to have his men throw up a line of breastworks. And since it's very rocky here, the breastworks are going to be mainly barricades thrown up, constructed of rock and timber, because it's not good for digging down. Now, Geary sees him doing it, and he's going to be very patronizing. He's wondering what type of men need breastworks to hide behind. So he's not going to be kind and gentle. He'd be like a linebacker you would want. He's never wrong. Now, when the Confederates are making big gains down on the Union left. They'll send orders to General Slocum. We need reinforcements. So not only does Slocum leave here, he's still going to the Figment. He's the commander of the Army's right wing. He will take the acting commander of the 12th Corps with him, Pap Williams, and they will go off with Ruger's division. Some of them will reach there in time to see some fighting down on the Union extreme left. They'll call for more men. And I said, and our friend, before I turn it over to our friend, he mentioned it in one of his yesterday in some of his talks. Geary will be ordered to take his division, leaving one brigade behind to hold a front that had formerly been held by 10,000 men by about 1,800 men. These are General Greene, Pop Greene as he's called, and his men are left here. Geary goes off, and he never goes. He gets confused a little bit, like some linebackers. They sometimes have a blind spot, and they're too aggressive, and he is going to head down the Baltimore Pike, which is right beyond where we see those buildings. And he's going down as far as Rock Creek, and he is going the wrong way. And during that time, our Confederate friends are going to attack. And our Confederate friends are, that all good Yankees better say their prayers and thank goodness for Pap Greene. Because Pap Greene and his earthworks, of which Geary had been so contemptuous, are going to be stuck with about 1,800 men and about 5,500 Confederates coming after them. And I'll turn you over to Allegheny Johnson. Allegheny Johnson coming up here. We've been joined by him. Very popular. He's just back to duty. And he's been badly wounded at McDowell back on the 8th day of May 1862. And he just returned to duty with the Army shortly before they moved north to Gettysburg. So this is going to be General Johnson, and we're going to find out what he's going to do.
Okay, Johnson's division was to the north. Rock Creek's over here. By the way, this would have been all open, and especially in this area of the meadow. Subsequently figures in the fighting on July the 3rd. It's going to be the other side of Rock Creek. If you recall, Ewell's orders were to make a demonstration when you hear the sounds of Longstreet's guns, and if possible, develop it into assault. Longstreet's guns will go off, Alexander's guns, if you will, whatever. They would have heard them before, slightly before 4 o'clock, and then the assault began the fighting. Ewell and Johnson are slow to move. And finally, Johnson is not going to move till it gets to be about 6 to 6:30 that evening. However, he couldn't have moved at a better time, because as Ed just told you, they had virtually stripped Culp's Hill of everything but George Greene's brigade. So Johnson and them, two brigades will come. We're in Lower Culp's, as Ed described it, and we'll go to the saddle. The divide is the saddle. And from the saddle up to the crest is about 400 yards. This area here, now they occupy, this stone wall was here. And they're going to hold that, they held that until they were, the other brigade was pulled out. So then Greene, he held from the crest to the saddle. And they had also built, we'll show you, a traverse trench that ran from the saddle. Well, the soldiers call it the elbow in the line. And you'll see it's rather distinctive, and they had a traverse trench that ran there. So Johnson's attack will move forward. In this area comes George, Maryland, Stewart. Now, I said there was 3 brigades. we love the if, you know. A factor in this possibly could be, and that goes back to Jeb Stewart. Jeb Stewart is going to arrive here, and he'll come down probably a little after noon of July the 2nd, the head of his command coming down from Carlisle. Okay? But his command is worn out. Well, you'll hear more about it tomorrow when we go to the East Cavalry Battlefield from Marshall and Ed. Anyhow, if you want to play the if game, how do you protect the left flank of the army? Who would do that? Cavalry. But they don't have cavalry to do it. So what Johnson had to do was detach the Stonewall Brigade. And the Stonewall Brigade are going to be out Hanover, and they're going to fight at Brinkerhoff Ridge, and they're going to contend with Irvin Gregg's cavalry brigade. So they have to hold the flank for the army. That normally is a role with Stewart. So if you want to argue, well, Stewart should have been here earlier in a sense, say June 29th or something, okay, but July 2nd in a sense is critical because Maryland Stewart's brigade is going to swing through here and they're going to attack the right flank of Pap Greene's brigade, and that's under Lieutenant Colonel David Ireland of the 137th New York. And they're going to put up a fight worthy of the 20th Maine. Probably the difference is nobody except us nuts know who David Ireland was, because David Ireland is going to be shipped to the West with the 12th Corps, and he is going to be killed in the Atlanta campaign. So he doesn't get to write a book, The Passing of the Armies, or something like that. And that's true, you know, and literally, very few people, but their fight they gave. The key thing is, and I'll show you, get up there, let's say the Stonewall Brigade was here. Would have put them on the left. It's the only room for them. They would have swept this meadow. They would have came up through what we know today is, I'm speculating, but it seems logical, Pardee Field. They would have been overlapping completely the flank of the 137th Pennsylvania. They could have went right up the ravine, and the Greene's line probably would have not been able to hold under this kind of an assault. But the Stonewall Brigade's not here because they have to protect the left flank of the Confederate Army because there's no cavalry to do it. And so, and Stewart is going to hold from the saddle, which we'll go to next. He's going to hold from that point roughly this stone wall, and the wall was continuous. The only wires a gap in is where they put the road. It would run the whole way down through here. As you can see it running down through here. This is the original wall, stone wall that was here, divided the land. And they're going to hold that, and that's going to be the message sent back to Ewell. One thing you must understand, Richard Ewell never came here. Robert E. Lee was never here. Ed Johnson, old Allegheny was here, and his boys were here, but they sent back word, and Johnson was right. We made a lodgment. We were able to capture some of the works. And when that message reached Ewell, that in turn is the basis that they're sent on. Well, if you made this, why not we develop it into a full-scale assault the next day, because you gained ground. And when you gain ground, that means that we have an opportunity. But Ewell never comes out here to look at what that meant. Okay, you gained ground, but you didn't gain the good ground. You only gained this bottom ground, and you only did it against one brigade. And then during the night, the 12th Corps comes back, and they're going to occupy from here across. That's McAllister's Hill. They're going to cross over, and there's another ridge here behind us. They're going to line up there and then go up the side of the mountain and extend it. It's I told the people on my bus, this is a hard ground to understand, right, Ed? Because there's upper, lower, there's that other ridge line, which we'll see. But they come in. And this idea, if you want to know about Spangler Spring, they send out a detail of men. Because the word came back to Alpheus Williams that there's Rebs in the works. And he said, well, there can't be Rebs in the works. What do you mean there's Rebs in the works? Well, so they send out a squad of men. They get all captured. Then nobody comes back. So a little while later, they decide to send out somebody else. They send out a sergeant who's smarter than most lieutenants. And he comes back and he said, the rebels are as thick as bees around that spring. So they weren't sharing drinks that night, okay? That's completely wrong. But they found out, though, that these works, and what they meant, these works down here are occupied by the Confederates thanks to Stewart's attack. On the upper side, Upper Culp's Hill, the other two brigades didn't make much headway at all. And so by dawn on July the 3rd, there were about 100 Federals here on Culp's Hill. Lee would, Ewell would ask for, and Lee would send reinforcements here. Smith's brigade comes up from Early, and then 2 from Rhodes's. There were about 9,000 Confederates here on Culp's Hill. So they're as closely even matched in numbers as you could have. But absolutely all the advantages, all of them, particularly as Ed pointed out, the breastworks, because Greene said to Gary, I don't give a damn about the theories or the books. We're going to build them. And the men bitched and moaned the whole time they were building them. And then they were thankful for them that night and the next day. But anyhow, they're almost evenly matched. But everything was in favor of the Federals here on the morning of July the 3rd.
Now, make yourself morph into General Lee on his initial plan for the 3rd. So that will lead us in to how it's going to be coming unraveled, and then we'll do what happens up here on the 3rd. But I think it's important that you go into Lee's initial plan on the 3rd.
When the night fell, as far as we know, the only possible Corps commander Lee could have conferred with was A.P. Hill. He's the only one, and it's doubtful. Sometime before midnight, Lee would issue orders, and the orders were, as he would say, the general plan remains unchanged. The general plan was that we would attack, what would they do on July 2nd? They attacked the left flank of the Union Army, and if the opportunity arose, and it did, we will attack the right flank of the Union Army. The only difference was that George Pickett's division had arrived in the battlefield late that afternoon. Pickett rode forward, talked to Lee and Longstreet, and was told, George, just take it easy. We'll call you when you need you. Now, George Pickett did not graduate in a stellar career at West Point. I can't say that. Moxley Sorrell always said, he said in his recollections, that when I delivered, I don't think he liked Pickett, so that might have colored this, but he said when I had to deliver orders to General Pickett, General Longstreet always told me to make sure that General Pickett understood the orders. Anyhow, as I said, he's slanted and biased against him. For reasons we do not know why. We'll take that up quickly. Longstreet should have told, Lee wanted Pickett's division on the field, ready to attack at dawn, which means the general plan. The only difference is George Pickett's division will reinforce McLaw's and Evander Law or Hood's division, and we're going to resume the assault against Lower Cemetery Ridge. Longstreet does not inform Pickett of that. Lee does not. There's a post-war letter that Longstreet wrote saying, well, it wasn't my duty because he was detached guard and wagon train, so he was under Lee's direct authority, and it should have been Lee. Well, that, folks, is essentially covering you-know-what. It was Longstreet. If you want to follow Longstreet for anything seriously, it's this. So when Lee gets up in the morning of July 3rd, which we'll get to, he rides down to Longstreet's headquarters expecting to see George Pickett's division, and he's not there. Over here, the orders come, and Ewell's headquarters are out here, and they were in a barn, and the orders are received, and his staff officer, someone had come here, and they said, General Ewell, you can't attack this. Have you going out there? And Ewell said, look, my orders are we're going to renew the assault. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to obey the order. And there was dissension on his staff about the wisdom of those orders. Again, Ewell never came here. Lee never came here. So they don't know what this ground's like. Ironically, that night, Slocum checks with, and Williams does with Meade, And they get permission after the Council of War because the word they informed Meade that the Confederates had captured some works. They said, okay, you can retake the works. So in other words, both sides here in the morning of July 3rd were going to attack. What happens is at 4:30 along Baltimore Pike and Powers Hill, and that was the preliminary Union plan, they will open fire with the artillery. So for 15 minutes, they bombard this place. Now the Confederates have no artillery support for their troops, which even makes it worse. At 4:45, the plan was for the Federals to begin an assault here in Culp's Hill to retake these works and to support. What happens is the Confederates step out first. And so the Confederates are going to launch 3 separate assaults here throughout July the 1st. But one of the earliest Federal assaults is going to occur about 6:30 from right over there, right where we're standing. Now,
what date did you say?
July 3rd. Yeah, it's the morning of the 3rd. I'm sorry if I said second. I apologize. It's the 3rd. But that becomes a decision. So, and compare it with Meade. Meade holds a Council of War. He wants to know what the condition of the Army is. What should we do in July the 3rd? Lee confers with no one. He just issues orders. And as far as we know, all those orders were verbal, delivered by a staff officer or a courier to the corps commanders. And it was up to them to fulfill his orders. But Lee has no idea what this situation is here.
One thing I'll add, Meade had a big advantage. He no longer uses Mr. Pinkerton. And he has probably the best intelligence officer that we have. I would argue, and people don't particularly like it, I said, if he'd been in the Pentagon at the time of 9/11, he would have known something was coming, because everything went through George Wright. And he knew, and he gives Meade's order. He knows Lee's order of battle better than Lee does himself. So when Meade meets that night, he knows within 2,500 men the strength of Lee's army. Lee does not know that himself, and that gives the enemy a big, big advantage. Now, what we're going to do, and it's a very interesting thing, because this is going to result. Now, the first regimental monument that will go up at Gettysburg goes up in the National Cemetery in 1867. That is the first Minnesota urn, which is like you typically put up if you have a loved one and have a plot in the cemetery. You put an urn up where you put flowers in and remembrance. Now, the first legitimate, what we think of the first of all these monuments that you see here, will be put up in 1879. That's why when you watch that picture there, and it's going to be by the second Massachusetts. And we're now going to talk about the initial attack, which we can pretty well, since we're not going to take the walk through Dean's property because of both the distance. That was a command decision by myself and your peerless leader, and the long walk would be with it. So we've got a little more time here, and we're going to take that stroll. And we're going to be up here. We're going to be the people that belong to Extra Billy Smith. Extra Billy Smith, one of the three, Billy Smith belongs to Early's division. He hasn't seen any action at all. He had served some use on when they spot him on the first and get concerned about somebody on their flank. So his men are up here, and again, remember, we've got the Federals would have been a lot better off if that Meade had disabused Slocum that with the scrapping of Meade's plan on the morning of the 2nd to attack with his right against the Confederate left. He had Slocum had been placed in charge of that, but Slocum is still thinking he's in command of the Army's right wing. So that means you got Slocum. The order comes from Meade. It goes to Slocum. Slocum goes to Alpheus Williams, who is the acting corps commander, and then it goes down to Colegrove, the acting brigade commander. And it's going down, and they're going to do reconnaissance, and they're going to charge these Confederates, and that's what's going to happen. And that we're going to stroll out there because we're going to go on a stroll out there, and you're going to see what they're going to do. When Mudge gets the order, he sees the Confederates up here in a strong position there, and he's going to say, it's murder, but it's an order, and he is going to order a charge, and the two regiments are going forward. The Massachusetts guys are going to lose half their men. The 27th Indiana is going to lose about 40% of their men for no really useful purpose. So, if you want to, you can see the monument out there. You can see the stone sitting on. See the monument? That monument has that stone on, and look at it in that picture there. And what we'll do now, we'll go up to the saddle. We'll talk about up to the saddle.
Can I say something, Ed? Can I say something?
Yes.
The reason I want to interject here, though, is, by the way, down there in that, see that monument down there in the field there? That's how far the 27th Indiana got. The 2nd Massachusetts got to right where we're standing, right here among the rocks. They're going to plant color. What I want to point out to you is, if you read Harry Fonce's book in Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill, I think Galzo did it. They timed this attack at 10:30. It's an impossibility at 10:30. But Ruger, in his report, acting division commander, says it happened at 10:30. I'll give you 3 reasons why it didn't. At 10 o'clock, the 3rd Confederate assault will go forward that way. Well, if they're assaulting that way, how can they repulse an attack a half hour later? They can't. Another fact, the 2nd Virginia is involved in the repulse. They're going to be over here behind the stone wall. After they repulse it, they are going to be moved over to, you see the Tawney Farm over there in your map? That was all open. So they're going to go by the Tawney Farm buildings, and they're going to fire across here and just shoot at Yankees from over there. So they're over there at 10 o'clock, 10:30. So they can't repulse it. The other thing, and most important, if you will, was the fact that Major in the 2nd Massachusetts at 9:30 records in his diary about the assault in the past tense. The assault actually went forward at 6:30, 4 hours earlier. But as you read them, and there's still, you see them in the books, but, you know, this is a case where, you, as an historian, you all know that, what is the internal evidence? Well, the internal evidence never made sense. And that's what I only wanted to point out. But the 2nd Mass made it right up here. They had lost 3 color bearers. One of them literally stood up in the rocks and waved the flag. Well, he didn't stand up in the rocks long and wave the flag. But this is the courage that they demonstrated. And as Ed said, Mudge, when he got it, he told the officers, this is murder.
And the next day, when they're formed up, they've lost over half their men. Slocum takes his hat off to them. And of course, does that do any good? But for Slocum's vanity of, because the orders are all coming down verbally.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a big dispute because the orders were send out skirmishers or advance 2 regiments. Well, the guy, Colgrove said, well, we can send out skirmishers. These guys are up here and behind this stone wall, so I guess we have to send out 2 regiments. And so what becomes, instead of a demonstration, is this attack that simply never, well, look, that's all the 27th Indiana got. They just, and those boys, those are the ones with the lost orders at Antietam. And Colgrove was, he was there. He was commander at that time of the regiment. But Well, I'll give you one quote of Ed made it. It's interesting, just to talk about how you people look at war. Well, Charles Morse, and he was the one who wrote in his diary, he wrote a letter to his mother. I never saw men behave so splendidly. It was awful and yet grand to see men expose their lives and lose them as they did. It was a sad thing, however, calling the rolls. But it was awful yet grand. So that's how they looked at things, But I don't think some of the men who were killed here thought of it as grand. Anyhow.
So how did they move?
And they will begin acquiring land. Immediately after they acquired the land purchased by the state of Pennsylvania, that becomes the core of the Gettysburg Battlefield Cemetery. And the Memorial Association will attempt to assess northern states for money to buy land. They will acquire lands that come up for sale, but they lack the power of condemnation. So they will not be, so by 1895, when Dan Sickles introduces and Congress passes a bill establishing the Gettysburg Battlefield, Gettysburg National Military Park. It's going to be, for the first time, it's going to address a national military park. The Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association only was interested in commemorating the Union troops. And their land they bought land on Culp's Hill, they bought land on Little Round Top, they bought land that is particularly significant to the Union. Only when and they put a 3-man commission in charge. Same as at Chickamauga, 2 Union officers, 1 Confederate officer. And it gives them the power to condemn land. The Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association will turn over to the Gettysburg National Military Park 400 acres of land. The government will then condemn the interurban line that has been built and the land down in the Devil's Den where an amusement park has taken place, is being built. Sickles goes down and demonstrates. He's just been elected to Congress and he's arrested. So he will then, it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 1896, Supreme Court, on the same vote as Topeka versus Topeka, the United States versus the Topeka School Board divides 9-0. I'm not arguing that this is as important as Topeka versus the United States versus the Topeka School Board. But the United States government has the inherent power to condemn land where the soldiers fought, the battle resulted in which the very existence of the nation was at stake. So they then had the power of condemnation, and the park will become what we know. Now the Confederates, they're interested in Confederate land. Because up until it becomes a national military park, no one's going to urge the Marylanders to put a Confederate monument up here. So this is a very important place. All right below us there is an area where bodies were removed. And not only was a burial trench in which Confederate dead were buried. Now remember, there are no GI dog tags until 1902. Neither the Confederate government nor the United States government gave a damn about dog tags. There were proposals. Now, the settlers only attached to the Army of the Potomac and early in the war will sell an identification disc. And generally they're kind of patriotic. They'll have a picture of McClellan on one side, and on the back side they'll stamp in your name, your unit, and maybe where you're from, which is a basic thing in a dog tag. This was proposed at that time for the United States government to adopt it, but it's tied in red tape and filed away and will not be pulled out and implemented by the United States government until 1902. I was asked that question. Now what we are, right behind us is Party's Field, and now we're going to move down to the elbow. And now remember, when Huey disappeared with Candy and Cane, I love those two brigade commanders. Even an idiot knows who the two brigade commanders have to be. Candy and Cane. Now the Mormons love Colonel Cane. He's very high. If you're a Mormon, you know him well. Because he's going to solve the problem that was resulted in a Mormon war. And when the army is sent out there, a fourth of the army, to straighten Brigham Young out. So he goes as a semi-official representative of the United States and works on an agreement to solve the Mormon war, because the Mormons were going to burn everything they had in Salt Lake City, down to 36,000, because they'd had bad luck with the United States, both in New York State, Independence, Missouri, and Nauvoo in Illinois. So they solved it. So this Confederates are going to be up here. We're on the Confederate toehold right now. And we'll go down to the Traverse. So what Ireland has to do, he has to thin his men out. And he's going to have the elbow, and we can see the area of the reverse of the Traverse, and we'll go down to the saddle. Anything to add here, Jeff?
Only that Kane, Pennsylvania is named for Kane. Thomas Kane's the northwestern part of the state. He came from Philadelphia. He opposed the fugitive slave law. His father was a judge. His father had him arrested and put in jail. And then he got out. But he was wounded. He was out of the army after Chancellorsville for a while, recovering. He was up home in Kane, and that's way up the northwestern part, Fort Erie. Beautiful little town. That's where he's buried. And once the Confederates got into Pennsylvania, Kane rushed back here to take command of his brigade because this was a defense of his home state. He's a very disciplined, I mean, almost idealistic kind of guy, as Ed said, but very sharp in that. But quite an interesting figure. We'll talk about him a little bit later, too. But he was.
All right, we'll go down to the travel.